Hey, hey, what's happening? Welcome into the Take the North podcast. It is game week. It was the first open locker room of the 2025-2026 season. And we are here along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. I am Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Dan and I are both posted up at Haugh here today as we heard from many players. We also heard from Ben Johnson. I am in the NFL Network studio right now in the hallways of Haugh. I see that Dan Wiederer is in the atrium right now. Danny boy, what is going on, man?
It is game week, as you mentioned, and today was our first open locker room session of the Ben Johnson era. And color us surprised when we walked into that room and saw all of the stalls rearranged from what we were so used to in 2024 and before. The lockers were arranged by position. There were a lot of guys. I don't know that anybody in there was in the same stall that they were in when we last left that locker room, were they?
No, and I didn't get, because there were so many issues to tackle in that locker room, I did not really get to the rhyme or reason of where everybody moved. I mean, the position groups are together the way it looks right now. But like you said, like Caleb Williams is on the completely other side of
Yeah.
the locker room. Jaylon Johnson is on the complete other side of the locker room. So I don't know exactly what went into it. I did ask Jaylon Johnson. He's got a corner office, as I like to call it. He's got one of the corner spots, and he did say that he I think he was in a different spot, but he did some wheeling and dealing with Ben Johnson, and he was able to get himself a corner office and put the corner backs all along that back wall in the Bears' enormous and beautiful, quite frankly, locker room.
And now he's in the stall previously occupied by Darnell Mooney once upon a time back in that
That's
back
right.
corner over near the equipment office. So yeah, there's a lot of familiarity that we got to gain in that locker room, because some days you got to go in and you got to know which way you're turning as soon as you get in there. And so we're going to have to learn that over the course of this week, but that's a trivial problem to have.
Yeah, a lot of disorientation, but we managed to find our way to
Amazing.
several of the players. Yeah, it's pretty incredible what Dan and I were able to do in the locker room today. But issue number one, or topic number one, has to be with a bullet. It would be Jaylon Johnson. Like we said, he was front and center in front of his fancy corner office locker today. And we've all been wondering, where is he? What's been going on? And as it turns out, Dan, the injury, he was up front with it. We'll let you hear it from his mouth here in just a second, but let's kick it around a little bit first, Dan. As it turns out, it is ladies and gentlemen, a groin injury that Jaylon Johnson has been dealing with. We don't know yet. We're recording here on a Tuesday. We don't know yet if he will be available to play in the Monday night game against the Minnesota Vikings, but he is there, prepared to be cleared, prepared to practice for the Bears this week. What'd you think, Dan?
He said a pretty bad groin injury, which made me squirm a little bit, because you never want a groin injury to begin with. You certainly don't want a pretty bad groin injury if you're going to suffer one. Jaylon said that occurred during a workout when he was working with receivers away from the team at the end of the summer, just before training camp began. And so it obviously is an injury, Grote, that kept him out for the entirety of training camp. And now we're all asking the question on, is he going to be available for a bright lights big stage game against the Vikings on Monday night? And if so, how much, right? Like, because I think you and I both are of the belief that if Jaylon plays, it's going to have to be on a limited snap count, just because there is so much conditioning and physicality that he needs to reacclimate to as he gets going. And so, again, we were not allowed out for what was described as a walkthrough today. So we didn't get to put our own eyes on Jaylon moving around. We should get that opportunity on Wednesday. And we'll just kind of play the waiting game, probably all the way up until kickoff or 90 minutes before on Monday night.
Yeah, and let's do this without further ado. We've got 4 pieces of audio here today, and a lot of times it's just Dan and I talking, but we need to let the audio lead the way to some degree today, because we obviously have not heard from Jaylon Johnson in a long time. Why don't we let our listeners to Take the North hear exactly what Jaylon Johnson had to say about his status for the Minnesota game, and you will hear him talk about the injury in his words. Here's Jaylon.
Jaylon, are you playing?
I'm doing everything I can to play. I know I had a good workout this morning, so I'm feeling good. Probably the best I felt all off season. Training camp per se, but just trying to do everything I can to be back.
What's the injury?
I had a growing injury over the offseason. I was doing some releases with some receivers and stuff like that, and honestly, I would say a freak accident as far as the injury. Same movement I made plenty of times, and just when I felt that I knew I was going to be out some time because the amount of pain that I had and just the feeling that I had, I knew I was going to be out. But I think for me, it was just like in that moment, just letting God work through me and around me in whatever way it looked like, whatever He was protecting me from or preparing me for, I was taking it head on. So I mean, it's definitely been a journey. Been frustrating going in the training room to the weight room, back to the training room for 6, 7, 8 weeks now. So I mean, for me, it's just a mental test.
You had, I think, playfully taken some jabs about your contract. Some other guys have passed you up. So just kind of, I think you were being playful. Maybe you weren't, but so none of this had you not practicing in training camp has nothing to do with the contract. Is that correct?
You know me better than that. I ain't never held out. I haven't ever done any of that. So I mean, for me, I mean, again, for the media, it's a good play as far as the contract and the timing and things. But I'm not that type of cat.
Dan, what'd you think of what Jaylon Johnson had to say?
Well, first of all, kudos to you for taking the steering wheel of that session because I thought that was a good way to get everything started. We haven't talked to Jaylon since early June, and so there was a lot to cover in a little bit of time there, and you did a good job of getting that express train right out of the station really quickly and to the point. And I thought Jaylon was very forthright as he usually is in hitting those questions head on. I do appreciate that you did ask him about the contract comments that he made shortly before he got injured, which left a lot of people curious and intrigued about what might be in the back of his mind. And he said, I'm not that kind of cat. Look, like you've got a guy now that has to become a big part of what this defense is. And it starts Monday night against the Vikings. And if he can't be out there, you are going to be fighting a little bit uphill. I'll have some insight for you in a minute or two on Deshaun Wright, who would be the proverbial next man up if Jaylon is not able to play or is limited in any capacity. But you know the stakes of Jaylon Johnson returning to full health. This Bears season requires Jaylon Johnson to be at full strength for the defense to be able to carry the load that they're expected to carry for an evolving offense. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle this for week one with an understanding that there's 16 games behind that. And so I think everybody in the building has got to be like eager for Jaylon to play, but also cautious about how much they use him with an understanding of what he means to the season at large.
Yeah, and one of his favorite receivers to go up against, Justin Jefferson, who I know a couple times that the two of them have been ripped off of playing against each other. Seems like one or the other in a lot of cases is injured or banged up, and in this case, it's Jaylon Johnson. Although Justin Jefferson is officially, like when you look at the depth chart thing, and I know no injury reports have come out yet, but it does have the little Q by his name. If you look at a lot of the depth charts right now, he is questionable with his own injury. Do you know the injury, Dan, off the top of your head? For some reason, I did not jot it down here.
I don't have it off the top of my head. I do know that from talking to some folks in Minnesota early in the week, they expect him to play. But again, it's a matter of will he be at full strength. The Vikings will be without Jordan Addison. We know he'll be dealing with a suspension in week one. They had to go out and bring back Adam Thielen home. By the way, Adam Thielen was essentially a practice squad guy when I was leaving the Vikings beat in 2013 to come here. He was just the undrafted rookie out of Mankato State or Minnesota State at Mankato, whatever it was called at the time. Now he's back right at the end of his career, trying to supply some depth to a depleted receiving core. But the Bears are going to need their secondary guys to be ready to roll on Monday night, even against a young quarterback like J.J. McCarthy. You can't let their game breakers break open the game. And so it would be really helpful to be as close to full strength as humanly possible.
Yeah, and Tyreek Stevenson is the other cornerback that is official. No funny stuff. He is starting, ideally with Jaylon Johnson, maybe the guy that you spoke to, Deshaun Wright, possible as well. It's good. Like, nobody roots for injuries or suspensions, but Jordan Addison had that first game, the 30-27 Minnesota overtime win over the Bears. Jordan Addison had 8 catches for 162 yards.
Yeah.
So the Bears do get that is for real, that guy not being there. But, TJ Hawkinson had 114 receiving yards in that game. That, of course, all was Sam Darnold. So, and we'll get more into the matchup and breaking down this game as the week goes on. This day was a lot about just figuring some things out with Jaylon Johnson being number one. Let's hear more from Jaylon Johnson now. Here is the question, very specific question, and an interesting answer that we both need to work to interpret from Jaylon Johnson. The question to him was, where do you think your conditioning is in terms of keeping up game speed?
I mean, I like to say I can go out there and play, but I mean, it's definitely hard to. I feel like if we had a game today, it wouldn't be a thing. But I think really this week will be important for me to get the pads back on, get practices under my belt, game speed, moving around, covering guys, communicating. I think that all will help me. But again, there's not too much you can replicate in the game.
The key part to that right there, Dan, is, and some of us in the media room were trying to interpret it specifically, said if we had a game today, it wouldn't be a thing. I think having heard it now like a sixth or seventh time, it sounds to me like he is saying he wouldn't play in the game, or it wouldn't be a thing. It's no
I think he
big
was
deal.
saying that his conditioning wouldn't be a thing if they had a game today. I think that's the way I interpreted it, is he was saying his conditioning wouldn't be an issue if they were to have a game today, but he needs to get through the week and see when you're stacking up days, does it create a little fatigue? Does it create a situation where you're trying to get used to playing full-blown competitive professional football again, right, Grote? Like that's no small thing. And that's why when you miss 6+ weeks, coming off a 6+ week break, coming off of an OTA and minicamp period where you weren't even at all the practices, it's been a long time since Jaylon Johnson has had to stack together in this building at Haugh Hall a work week like they're going to need him to stack together this week or even next week to play. And so this is going to be fascinating to see kind of how he gets through the week. And again, what eyes do the Bears put on it? From a coaching staff perspective, from a training perspective, you got to have some eyes and ears on this thing to figure out what you trust going into Monday night. And then you're going to have to be flexible to understand that you may have to change your plans if something tells you have to.
The vibe from Jaylon Johnson, and that's just a small portion of however long he spoke to, 6 or 7 minutes, whatever it was, around his locker. But the entire vibe of Jaylon Johnson was not, oh, hell yeah, I'm playing. They're not going to keep me off that field. I got to get up there. He was being very realistic.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see kind of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was the whole vibe. We'll see. It was, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen. I'm paraphrasing. You're going to listen to what the trainers say. Going to listen to what the coaches say. So you don't have a player out here who is overly anxious about it. Well, maybe that's misinterpreting it a little bit on my part, but I think people know what I'm saying here. And as huge as it feels, it is the first game of the season, and Jaylon Johnson is your best defensive player right now until further notice, in my opinion. So make sure that guy is healthy, as painful as it would be if Jaylon Johnson does not play under the lights at Soldier Field on September 8th.
And so if he doesn't play, or if he's limited significantly, that turns the stage over to Nahshon Wright, who I visited with for a little while this afternoon, Grote. And just for folks who are trying to get a little bit familiar with who Nahshon Wright is, this is a third-round pick of the Cowboys in 2021. He spent 3 years playing in Dallas, but really only made 3 starts while there. He worked under Al Harris, who's now here, which is a big reason he's here and has earned the trust of this coaching staff. But in August of 2024, the Cowboys traded him to none other than the Minnesota Vikings. And then the Minnesota Vikings cut him and then brought him back to their practice squad. And so for most of 2024, Grote, Nahshon Wright was taking scout team reps on defense against Justin Jefferson. So he's very familiar with the Vikings' #1 receiver over there and what he brings to the table. And I've talked to him about that both in early August and again today, about kind of learning about himself through that challenges. And he said to Justin Jefferson's credit, he was always very open to saying, hey, look, be very aggressive with me. You can be as physical as you want to be, work your technique, do what you need to do to get better while defending me in practice. And Nahshon Wright said that it really gave him reassurance that he belongs in this league. When you've been traded, when you've been cut, when you've been reassigned to a practice squad, there is a little bit of doubt that creeps into your head. And the way to sort of get past that doubt is to prove to yourself that you're still a really good player. It's an easy way to do it is by going up against one of the best receivers in football and proving to yourself that you can handle it. And I think Nahshon Wright did that in 2024 in Minnesota. Then he comes over here and sort of revives his career under both Al Harris and then Dennis Allen, who's allowing him to use both that length, that physicality, and that competitiveness that he has to be a man coverage weapon. Now, look, you watch that Chiefs game the same way I watch that Chiefs game. There's 2 plays in that game that are going to give people a lot of pause. They're going to see a face mask penalty and a PI penalty on the same play against Rashee Rice, and they're going to go, that's trouble. They're going to see Tyquan Thornton beating Nahshon Wright for a 58-yard completion and say, that's trouble. the thing that you and I will do to reassure those folks is say that was not the norm throughout the spring and summer with Nahshon Wright.
Right.
Then again, it doesn't matter if it's not the norm in practice. If it doesn't translate to the game stage, you're in trouble, because if you make those mistakes on Monday night in a game that the whole world's watching, everyone will kind of write you off as not Jaylon Johnson, right? And so this is the test that Nahshon Wright may be facing in the event that Jaylon Johnson isn't ready to go on Monday night.
Yeah, and hey, cornerbacks get burned. It happens. Even Jaylon Johnson, they get burned sometimes. Sometimes they are not good in coverage. It occurs. We did see that from Nahshon Wright, but for the most part, a good preseason and really a very good camp. Just getting a little confirmation too on the Justin Jefferson injury. Per our guy Adam Studzinski, it's a hamstring injury for Justin Jefferson. But all signs point towards, and we'll keep an eye on it throughout the week, that as you said, Dan, your sources in Minnesota, that Jefferson most likely will play. I've not heard any alarms, going off in Minnesota other than it is what it is. He is dealing with some sort of hamstring injury right now. Let's get on to the next big news of the day. I don't think it's a big surprise, but it's interesting that Braxton Jones was named the starting left tackle for the Bears, as Ben Johnson finally gave us the information on that. No surprise to anybody, and especially, just because he is the incumbent, he is the veteran. Ozzie Trapillo, he got moved over to the right side. So everything, unless the Bears were to have brought in somebody else from the outside, it was going to be Braxton Jones. And look, playing on Monday Night Football with two guys in Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, who are double-digit sack guys, you don't really want to mess around. And Braxton Jones is your best option right now, even if he is not completely recovered from the foot injury.
It's funny because for a piece I'm writing for The Athletic with Kevin Fishbane, I said the winner of the Bears left tackle competition is Braxton Jones, and that question mark is like, that's how the Bears are punctuating it, right? Because they're so hesitant to say that this is the long-term, get out your Sharpie, write it in the depth chart and don't erase it type of thing. It's kind of, we got to start somebody. Braxton Jones is who we're going to start, and we reserve the right to reevaluate this on a week-by-week basis, or at least at the end of the month of September. And so it's going to be fascinating to see if that changes at all when we get past the bye week in week 5 and get back for week 6. But Braxton Jones will be starting on Monday night. It will be his 41st career start. It will be his first start since suffering that very serious ankle fracture in December against the Lions. And you're just trying to figure out what's there for Braxton Jones in this moment in time, right? Both physically and mentally, what's there for him after a training camp that was uneven, that was inconsistent, that was full of, some physical hurdles for him to overcome, some mental hurdles to overcome. And you're just kind of against a Brian Flores-led attacking aggressive defense that attacks from all angles. You're just kind of holding your breath, trying to figure out what Braxton Jones can give you and how the Bears can compensate for what he can't give you. And we'll see what happens on Monday night.
Well, and to your point about how the Bears have been answering questions about Braxton Jones, I think this cut him about the play from Ben Johnson is about 25 seconds, which is a relatively short explanation as to why they are going with Braxton Jones. But here is the Bears head coach on why Braxton Jones at LT.
He knows what he's doing. Is it perfect every play? No, it's not. But we did see the execution go up over the course of the last few weeks. And so there is a trust level in him knowing what to do. And we think that he's going to continue to ascend the more reps that he gets.
So no reason for hyperbole. They have been saying, they've been very honest all along. So he did say, the key part, Ben Johnson said the execution has gone up. In other words, Ben Johnson feels like he's looked better. But when it comes down to it, you go with the more experienced guy. And again, I go back to my conversation with Braxton Jones after was the Buffalo game previous to the Kansas City game? Was that the one,
Correct, yes.
most recent Soldier Field game? And I talked to him, and he was like very much so like, hey, I get why all the outside noise. I get why we're being pushed. I understand it. He's like, but 9 weeks ago, I wasn't even moving because of the injury. So in other words, he was trying to tell me and thus everybody else who's listening to Take the North, look, it's been a bitch getting back to where I am right now. So that's where things are right now. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, well, look, like you and I had Kyle Long on WSCR 670 on Friday, and that's obviously an interview worth listening to somewhere in our podcast feed for those who haven't heard it. But Kyle went through this process at one point of trying to recover from a very serious leg injury, ankle injury, and surgery and the rehab that came back from it. And it really does test you both physically in just like being able to create the same amount of power and
Yeah.
strength in the leg that you have, which Braxton acknowledged today. It tests you in mentally overcoming the mistakes that occur because you're not quite at the peak form that you once knew. And so there's a lot that goes into trying to excel at the highest level of professional football when you're dealing with both those physical limitations and the mental struggle that comes with that. And so Braxton's going to have to deal with that in the short term. You heard Ben there say that he very much anticipates Braxton ascending with continued reps. We'll see, right? Like that's just a leap of faith in a lot of ways as they go forward. And man, you just kind of hoped with what they did to the interior of the offensive line this offseason that you'd get to the starting gate of the season feeling a lot better about the tackle positions. And I don't know that we do right now. More on that in an episode later this week. But that's something to keep an eye on as the Bears try to get this offense off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, they were pushing Darnell Wright. They were essentially telling Darnell Wright in the middle of camp it ain't good enough. That it's I mean, like they were saying, look, he's okay, good on first and second down, and then third down. Like he's every. It seemed to be the theme with Darnell Wright was let's go all out on every single play. Is kind of what they were saying about Darnell Wright. So he was getting it a little bit too.
And with Braxton, like I reflect back on what Dan Richard told us coming out of the week against Miami in early August, where he said, look, we went into the joint practices and Braxton had a great day on that Friday afternoon or Friday morning here in Lake Forest. And he said, that's a player we can win with. And then 2 days later, when you go to the stadium for a game, there was some inconsistency and some unevenness that made them go, whoa, and they had to sit Braxton down and say, this is not up to the standard. Whatever this is, this can't exist, And so like, what are you going to get on Monday night in a game that everybody's going to be watching and in a game that everyone's going to be anticipating as this sort of a rival for the new look Bears? And you're just kind of left wondering at a position that you don't want to be really left wondering at.
Yeah, and Ben Johnson and Dan Rochar, who you just mentioned, they're not going to be able to be as creative with their blocking because, again, of the two potential double-digit sack guys. So I'm sure they will find ways to double guys and chip guys and do what they have to do, but it does become at the level of difficulty obviously goes up when you have those two guys coming at the quarterback position. That said, the last piece of audio I have here is Braxton Jones himself. And here is the checkup from Braxton Jones. And basically the question is, are you ready?
You've been very honest with your recovery and the process that you've been through to get to where you are. Are you ready, full force, to be the starting left tackle?
I've been ready. There's just some things you personally you want to clean up, but I think the amount of reps and them priming me for this situation has been great. So I just think going forward, it's just cleaning each mistake up, and you're going to have those. This is the National Football League, but cleaning it up, being consistent, and being the driving force of that.
You mentioned how you have learned to kind of deal with the Chicago media or big market media in general. How different is it as you stand here right now in the first open locker room of this year relative to the first one you had?
Obviously there's a lot more talk around it this year, obviously at the left tackle position. So there's a lot of media on it, of course. But I kind of take it the same. I'm gonna be the same person regardless if that's not going my way, regardless of what it is. I'm gonna be the same and try and be as consistent as possible and be the same with you guys. So obviously the first time doing this, it was not like this. But now the opening of this season and the talk behind it, obviously it's going to be like this. But like I said, regardless of how many of you guys there is, how many there isn't, I'm going to be the same, and I'm going to approach the game the same how I always have.
The first time around, Dan, was holy crap! I'm the starting left tackle for the Bears. How did that get here?
Yeah, a 5th round pick, right? Yeah, out of Southern Utah, right? Southern Utah.
Yeah,
that's where we're
Southern
at
Utah.
Look, like I will say this, like I do really appreciate and admire Braxton's consistent professionalism and his maturity. Like he's had that since the day he walked in here as a rookie. That's still there. And now it's just about can you take the next leap in your NFL career? And if you can, how big is that leap? And the Bears will sit there and have eyes on that. It does marry up with something else that Nahshon Wright told me when I talked to him today, which is about accepting the idea that mistakes will happen, right? Like, and you can't beat yourself up when mistakes happen. And what Nahshon said about his own play very much applies to Braxton, where, you know, he's echoing the voices of the coaching staff and saying, we can correct errors. We cannot coach effort. So the one non-negotiable is full effort at all times. And I know that the Bears have been trying to get Braxton not to play with more effort, but to play with less caution throughout the month of August, to just go after it. I think
well put.
I think Ryan Poles described it as just playing with conviction and just going out there and letting it loose. And so now we'll get the trial on Monday night. And at this point, there's nowhere for anybody to hide anymore. And so all this stuff is going to play out on a very big stage, and we're going to have plenty to assess when we get to Tuesday morning.
And now I shall announce the captains for the 2025-2026 Chicago Bears, and then I will let Dan Wiederer immediately react to it. Are you ready, Dan? I got my big play sheet here.
So ready.
I know you're ready. You're always ready, man. Your rhymes are on time. The captains for the Chicago Bears. The offensive captains are Joe Thuney and Caleb Williams. The defensive captains for the Chicago Bears are Kevin Byard and Grady Jarrett. The special teams captain is it is Cairo Santos. Dan, your reaction?
Not a ton of real big surprises there. I don't know the last time that a kicker has been a captain of the Chicago Bears. We'd have to go back and figure out if Robbie Gould at some point in his tenure was worthy of that role. I don't recall. But look, like, your starting quarterback better be a captain. If they're not, you've got bigger problems in your building. Joe Thuney's a decorated, established, all-pro talent that's going to bring a certain level of leadership to your offensive line. I think you and I both agree that we would follow Kevin Byard and Grady Jarrett anywhere in life. That those guys, they speak with an authority and they handle their business with a purpose that is worth following. And so, wherever those guys want to take us, this is my invitation to Kevin and Grady. Grody and I are following wherever you want to go. And so kudos to those guys for getting the captain nod.
Amen. Yeah, I agree with you on all of those. I mean, some people, I think I heard them fussing on the score about Jaylon Johnson, but you cannot argue with two guys on defense that have been in the league for 10 plus years and represent wherever they have been very well, as both of those two players have. Yeah, Joe Thuney, you cannot complain about that. And he's, one of your best offensive players. And, he was a captain where he was previously as well. Caleb Williams, of course. So, I don't see any issues whatsoever with the captains that the Bears have this year. It's not 10 captains like they had last year. That's issue. There will be honorary captains as well.
There'll be one rotator, right? Yeah, one rotator per week. And so you'll get some of the honorary, like, oh, this is your former team. Why don't you go out and call a coin flip type of things. We'll see how that shakes down. I do have a list of questions for Ben Johnson for the rare Saturday availability that we're going to have with him this week because of the Monday night game. The things that can wait till the end of the week when the horde thins out and you can just kind of try to get to some of them. One of them that I have is just about, I don't know if we'll get to it, but about the captains in terms of, what is your process of getting locker room information relayed to you as a head coach, as a first-time head coach? Obviously Flus had the leadership council. He had all those captains. There was a pipeline with how the information got to him. Just curious how Ben wants it and receives it, in a way that's comfortable for him, because that is another part of this job, right? Like, being a head coach, you have to be the guy that people can come to with concerns or questions or suggestions or recommendations. And I'm just curious how Ben wants that stuff relayed, either via his captains or if they do have a separate leadership council that he'll turn to as well.
Yeah, and I want to get more into, and by then it will be much more appropriate than today, really get into what he thinks about that Minnesota defense. I brought up the idea of creative blocking, and when you have two double-digit sackers, I can't wait to really talk game plan with Ben Johnson. Just wasn't a whole lot of room to get into a lot of that kind of stuff today, but guaranteed we will break all of that down and bring all of the insight and information that we have as the week goes on here on the podcast. And Studs is telling us here, Weedsy, that Robbie Gould was a captain at one point in the year 2015 for the Chicago Bears, and that would have been John Foxy.
That is Foxy.
Foxy,
and Foxy is also the coach who eventually cut
Yeah.
Robbie Gould. So maybe the captaincy
Isn't that
role
ironic? Yeah.
wasn't the one that he really wanted to voice his opinion, and the people upstairs go, yeah, we get it, but why don't you take a hike? Like, not sure exactly how that went down, but
Yeah, we all get it. You're the mayor of the locker room, but you're out of here. Yeah.
as Studs reports, he was cut the next season. A very, very memorable Labor Day weekend Sunday. That was one of those Labor Day weekends that went off the rails on a personal level when you have to respond to big news like the franchise's all-time leading scorer being shown the door while you're 2 bottles into a nice dinner with your wife.
Wait, is that like when you were on the golf course when you heard about the Packers acquisition of a certain edge rusher from Dallas?
This is what I'm saying. Like Labor Day weekend and these big blockbuster moves, like you try to get away for a couple days before you get into the full grind through the end of the calendar year and beyond. And sometimes this stuff happens and you're in weird places.
I got you, man.
I confess every time I'm somewhere weird and something happens.
You're always hanging out with your bros, man. I mean, it's like this weekend you were hanging out with a bunch of husbands and like you're out of control, Weedsy.
Yeah, the wife had her college friends in and their husbands, and so that was there were points, Grote, where you're right, it was out of control.
I hope so, man. Somebody's got to drink for me. What up, Stud?
Hey guys, so real quick before we wrap up, because the story that I found to figure out that Robbie Gould was in fact a captain in 2015, I want you guys to try and guess who the defensive captains for that team were, because these are two names that I don't think you're going to get. I'll give you the offensive captains. It was Cutler and Matt Forte, which makes sense. Robbie Gould was obviously the special teams guy. Who do you guys think the defensive captains were for the 2015 Bears?
All right, we're going to give you a couple guesses, and then you're going to give us positions if we can't get it. I'm going to throw a Pernell McPhee at you.
You got it. Nice.
Wow.
Pernell McPhee was one of them.
That was a big acquisition, right? And he was a big talker. If you, Grote, you would have loved locker room stall visits with Pernell McPhee, as your predecessor Zach Zaidman did. Yeah, like he was a walking soundbite for sure. All right, so there's one other one.
Who was the other one? God, is that a Mel Tucker?
No, we were on to Vic at that point.
Oh, okay.
Vic,
Eddie Jackson not there yet. 2017, right? So I'm way off on that because these are guys.
You got the position. I'll give you you got the position right there.
Oh,
it was a safety.
Okay.
Oh! Please don't tell me it was Quentin Demps.
No, it was not.
Okay.
Who were
this? Is a name that I didn't even remember. Was a player for the Bears.
Wow.
All right, I am at a loss on this one.
Antrell Roll.
Oh yeah!
Oh my God! From the Cardinals, yeah,
that's right, Antrell.
We got late career Antrell Roll on the Bears.
By the way, only played 7 games that season. Antrell Roll.
He was so good when he wasn't with the Bears.
He got hurt on a jump ball. I feel like it was like a very weird injury, if I recall correctly. Antrell Roll was also a very key. Antrell Roll was also a very key source when I did a oral history of Devin Hester's kickoff. Or punt return, rather, against the Cardinals on that Monday night game. You remember they are who we thought they were game. And Antrell Roll was a Miami teammate of Devin Hester's who was then trying to tell his Cardinals special teams coordinator, don't kick it to Hester. Please don't kick it to Hester. And he was right with that advice.
All right. Now, and this is going to be the trust system with our listeners and viewers to the Take the North podcast. When giving feedback, wherever you give the feedback, whether it's on YouTube or wherever we pop up, I want you to be honest. Did you know who the captains were when Studs? Were you like, come on, guys, it's Antrell Roll? I mean, just be honest.
Antrell Roll and Pernell McPhee, baby.
And Pernell McPhee.
And you said then it was Cutler, Forte, and Robbie.
Yeah. So the offensive ones made a lot of sense, but the defensive ones I never would have guessed. I frequently forget that Pernell McPhee was on the Bears because I feel like he only played like 5 games. So.
My assumption would be that was also Matt Forte's last season in a Bears uniform, and it might have been maybe it was the year after that he had like 150 catches because all they could do was hit him with checkdowns because nothing else was working.
Forte's like, I'll take that. Sure. If you want to give that to me, I'll take that. Good stuff, Dan. Anything else here? I know we got a lot to come this week. We are just scratching the surface of this week, but Braxton Jones starting left tackle, Jaylon Johnson groin injury, essentially day to day were the headlines today.
Yeah, and we get QB1 tomorrow at the lectern.
Mhm.
Caleb Williams, for the first time in the regular season, will meet us, and we will come ready to have a productive conversation with Caleb.
Amen. For Dan Wiederer of The Athletic, I am Mark Grote of The Scorer, and Adam Studzinski is the executive producer of the Take the North podcast, for which I thank you for listening and watching.
Great talk. See you out there.